3 a.m. The high desert of New Mexico, July 1947. The air is electric, still charged from a thunderstorm that tore the sky open just hours before. This is a land of immense silence, a place where the sky feels closer than the next town. Tonight, that silence is broken. A rancher, William Mac Brazel, rides his horse through the pre-dawn gloom, checking his property for scattered livestock. The storm was violent, but what he finds is not damage from wind or rain. It's a field of debris. It stretches, he would later say, for 3/4 of a mile. His flashlight beam cuts through the darkness, catching glints of a material he has never seen. It isn't wood. It isn't metal as he knows it. He steps down from his horse, the crunch of the desert soil under his boots, the only sound. He picks up a piece. It's light, like balsa wood, but impossibly strong. He tries to bend it. It doesn't bend. He tries to burn it with his lighter. It doesn't scorch. He takes out his knife and tries to cut it. The knife slides off, leaving no mark. There are strange, thin I-beams etched with symbols. He doesn't recognize them. They look almost like writing, hieroglyphs of a kind he cannot place. There are pieces of a strange, foil-like substance, thin as paper, but when he crumples it in his fist, it unfolds itself, smoothing out perfectly, leaving no crease. Mac Brazel stands alone in the dark, miles from anything, holding a piece of wreckage that should not exist. He doesn't know it yet, but he is holding the epicenter of a mystery that will outlive him. He is holding the beginning of a story that will redefine the 20th century. It wasn't a plane. It wasn't a balloon. It was something else. The date is July 8, 1947. The location, Roswell, New Mexico. For several days, Mac Brazel had kept the strange material. He'd shown it to his family, to his neighbors. The consensus was the same. No one had seen anything like it. Finally, he drives into town and reports his discovery to Sheriff George Wilcox. The sheriff listens. He looks. And he makes a phone call. The call goes to Roswell Army Airfield, the home of the 509 bomb group. This is not just any air base. This is the base that dropped the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. This is the most advanced, high-security military installation on the planet. They deal in secrets that win wars. Major Jesse Marcel, the base intelligence officer, is sent to investigate. He drives to Brazel's ranch, sees the debris field, and collects samples. What he sees astounds him. Years later, his voice heavy with memory, he would state for the record, "It was not anything from this earth. That's all I know. I'm quite sure that anybody that would see it, they wouldn't know what it was. It was something I had never seen before, and I'll never see again." Marcel loads his car with the material and returns to the base to show his superior, Colonel William Blanchard. Blanchard orders the base's public information officer, Walter Haut, to issue a press release. And at 11 a.m., the story explodes. The local radio station, KGFL, is the first to broadcast the bulletin. Then, the Associated Press wire picks it up. By the afternoon, it's on the front page of newspapers from Chicago to London. RAAF captures flying saucer on ranch in Roswell region. The world stops. For a brief, intoxicating moment, the most profound question in human history seems to have been answered. We are not alone. The 509th, the men who wielded the power of the sun, had recovered a craft from another world. The town of Roswell is electric. Reporters are flooding the phone lines. The military has the proof. The secret is out. For about 4 hours. The machine grinds to a halt, and then it reverses. In Washington, the news is met not with wonder, but with annoyed panic. J. Edgar Hoover, head of the FBI, allegedly demands access to the disk. The Pentagon scrambles. Whatever fell in the desert, the answer, flying saucer, is unacceptable. The order comes down from the highest levels. Kill the story. General Roger Ramey, head of the 8th Air Force in Fort Worth, Texas, takes command. Major Marcel is ordered to load the real debris onto a B-29 and fly it immediately to Fort Worth, stopping at Roswell Air Force Base. But that's not what the public will see. General Ramey calls a press conference. He brings Major Marcel into his office, but the debris on the floor? It's different. Gone is the unburnable, unbendable mystery metal. Gone are the I-beams with alien script. In their place, the flimsy, torn remnants of a standard high-altitude weather balloon. Neoprene rubber, tinfoil, balsa wood sticks. Reporters are brought in, cameras flash. General Ramey dictates the new, official truth. Major Marcel is ordered to pose for the cameras. He kneels, holding the tinfoil and rubber, a look of profound discomfort etched on his face. The man who just hours earlier had handled material not of this earth is now the face of a mundane mistake. The story goes out. General Ramey empties Roswell saucer. The military had made an error. The excited provincial officers in New Mexico had simply misidentified a weather balloon. The story was dead. Mac Brazel, the rancher who started it all, is reportedly held by the military for nearly a week. When he emerges, he is a changed man. He tells the Roswell Daily Record a news story. He's sorry he ever mentioned it. He claims he'd found weather balloons before. He says, "I am sure what I found was not any flying disc." The retraction is total. The press moves on. The world moves on. The Roswell Incident, the moment humanity touched the stars, is officially buried under the mundane explanation of a weather balloon. But you cannot bury a memory. You can only silence the witnesses. And silence, in the high desert, has a way of preserving things. For 30 years, the silence held. Roswell faded from a headline into a joke, a footnote in the bizarre early days of the Cold War. The witnesses kept their secrets. They raised families, grew old, and held on to what they saw, what they heard, what they knew. Then, in the late 1970s, the first cracks appeared. Stanton Friedman, a nuclear physicist and UFO researcher, began digging. He found Jesse Marcel, the intelligence officer forced to pose with the fake debris. Marcel, now retired, was ready to talk. He described the real material, the material that vanished. He told his children the same thing. What he saw that day was alien. His son, Jesse Marcel Jr., then a boy, recalled his father bursting into their home in the middle of the night, waking the family to show them the wreckage. "Look at this," he'd said. "It's from another world." Marcel's testimony opened the floodgates. The silence broke, and a chorus of voices emerged from the past, all telling a story far darker and more complex than a simple balloon. Glenn Dennis, a young mortician in Roswell in 1947, he recounted strange calls from the airbase on the day of the incident. Inquiries about small, hermetically sealed caskets. How many could he get? What was the best way to preserve bodies that had been exposed to the elements? He described a frantic encounter at the base hospital with a nurse he knew. She was in tears, hysterical. She described bodies. Small, non-human bodies. 3 of them. She described a preliminary autopsy she had witnessed, sketching the beings on a napkin for him, before a military officer tore it away. Days later, that nurse was abruptly transferred to England. She was never heard from again. Frank Kaufman, who worked at the Roswell base, he spoke of a recovery team and a much larger intact craft, not just a debris field. He described a gouge in the earth and a coordinated military operation to move something large. Sheriff George Wilcox's family, his grandchildren, recalled the sheriff, a man they described as fearless, being terrified by the military police who came to his office. They told him he and his family would die if he ever spoke a word of what he saw. He never did. And then there was Walter Haut, the public information officer who wrote the original flying saucer press release. For his entire life, he maintained he was only following orders from Colonel Blanchard. But in 2002, after his death, a sealed affidavit was opened. In it, Haut confessed. He stated that the weather balloon story was a complete fabrication, a cover-up. He swore that he had seen the object. He described it as a metallic, egg-shaped craft, 12 to 15 feet long. He said he saw bodies. He said they were small, with large heads. He confirmed that the press conference with General Ramey was staged. The real material had been flown to at least 3 different bases, including, he believed, Los Alamos, the birthplace of the atomic bomb. One by one, the citizens of Roswell told their story. Not of a balloon, but of a coordinated, terrifying, and total military operation to secure an object and its occupants. The weight of this testimony became too much for the official story to bear. By the 1990s, the Roswell Incident was no longer a myth. It was a cold case. Under pressure from Congressman Stephen Schiff of New Mexico, the General Accounting Office, GAO, launched an official investigation. The public wanted answers. What really happened in 1947? In 1994, the Air Force, in response to the GAO inquiry, released its first major report. It was a stunning admission. The weather balloon story, they admitted, was a lie. It was a cover-up, but not for a flying saucer. The Air Force claimed the debris was from Project Mogul, a top-secret, classified program using high-altitude balloons equipped with microphones to monitor the Soviet Union's atomic bomb tests. The balloons were made of neoprene, radar-reflecting foil, and balsa wood. It was, they argued, this advanced, secret technology that the officers, untrained in its appearance, had mistaken for something alien. The secrecy, the intimidation, the cover story. It was all to protect Project Mogul from Soviet eyes. It seemed, for a moment, like a plausible terrestrial explanation. But the researchers, the witnesses, and the physicists who had studied the case for decades, they were not convinced. Project Mogul, they argued, does not explain the properties of the material Jesse Marcel described. Mogul's foil creased. Mogul's balsa wood burned. It does not explain the I-beams with hieroglyphic-like symbols. It does not explain the gouge in the earth, or the sheer volume of debris that Brazel described. And most importantly, it does not explain the bodies. In 1997, the Air Force released a second report, attempting to close this final, glaring hole in their story. This report was titled, The Roswell Report, Case Closed. The bodies, the Air Force claimed, were not aliens. They were a bizarre misremembering, a conflation of 2 separate events. They claimed the alien memories were actually from subsequent, unrelated military programs in the 1950s, like Project High Dive, which dropped anthropomorphic test dummies from high altitudes. The public and the researchers found this explanation insulting. The witnesses were clear. They weren't misremembering something from 1953. They were talking about July 1947, the mortician, the nurse, the intelligence officers. The case closed report, intended to be the final word, only deepened the suspicion. It felt like another, more sophisticated layer of the same tired cover-up. The government had now admitted to lying. First, it was a weather balloon. Then, it was a Project Mogul balloon. Both were deceptions. Why, critics asked, would the military go to such extraordinary, career-threatening lengths, intimidating a small-town sheriff to death, silencing its own officers, staging press conferences, and lying to the public for 50 years to protect a balloon, even a secret one? The investigation had hit a wall built of classified documents, contradictory reports, and time. The physical evidence was long gone, spirited away by military aircraft in the dead of night. All that remained was the story. What we are exploring here isn't just a single event. It's a labyrinth of official narratives and human testimony. If you believe in questioning the official story, and if you're drawn to the mysteries that lie just beyond our understanding, subscribe to our channel. We are dedicated to uncovering the truths hidden in the shadows of history. Today, Roswell, New Mexico is a tourist destination. The town has embraced its strange legacy. Alien faces stare from shop windows and streetlights. It's easy now to dismiss it, to see the commercialism and the kitsch, and to forget what really happened here, to forget the terror in the eyes of the sheriff, to forget the frantic whispers of the nurse, to forget the conviction in Jesse Marcel's voice as he told the world, it was not of this earth. The Roswell Incident is more than a story about a crash. It is a story about truth and our relationship with it. It marks the precise moment in American history when the public, for the first time, looked at its government, the victorious, trusted government that had just won World War II, and realized it was capable of a profound, unified deception. It was the birth of modern ufology. It was the birth of Area 51 as a concept in the public mind. It was the moment the question, "Are we alone?" became dangerously intertwined with the question, "Are we being lied to?" The government says the case is closed, but a case cannot be closed when the explanation fails to fit the facts. A case cannot be closed when the core mystery, the material that would not bend, the symbols that could not be read, the bodies that were not human, remains unexplained, dismissed as fantasy by the very organization that admitted to lying in the first place. Somewhere, perhaps in a classified vault, in a forgotten hangar, or buried beneath the sterile tile of a government laboratory, the truth of Roswell may still exist. But the legacy of Roswell is not hidden at all. It is in the sky. It is in the persistent questions we ask. It is in the part of the human spirit that looks up into the vast, silent dark and refuses to believe this is all there is. The desert holds its secrets. The storm is past. But the field of debris, the impossible metal, the memory of that July night, it remains. It waits. The desert holds its secrets. But what do you believe? Was Roswell the first and final proof of contact? Or was it the most sophisticated government deception ever orchestrated? Tell us your theory in the comments below.